Are you a non-resident of Canada earning rental income from Canadian property? If so, I'm going to show you how to file a Section 216 tax return to report your rental earnings, potentially reducing your tax bill, and maybe even receive a refund. This is the final step in my non-resident rental income filing video series. If you haven't seen the previous videos, check out the links in the description to get up to speed. Before we begin, I want to make it clear that I am not an accountant and this is not tax or legal advice. This video is for informational purposes only. Always consult a tax professional to ensure you're getting the right guidance for your situation. In this video, I'll walk you through how to fill out the form T1159, the Section 216 return, along with the form T776, Statement of Real Estate Rentals, step by step. Before we start filling out the forms, let me explain why Section 216 matters. As a non-resident earning rental income in Canada, you're normally subject to a flat 25% withholding tax on your gross rental income. But with Section 216, you can elect to file a tax return instead. What's the benefit? Instead of paying 25% of your total rental income, you can deduct your expenses and pay tax only on your net income, which could significantly lower your tax bill or even lead to a refund. If you've been approved for an NR6, you must file a Section 216 return, or you could be subject to the tax on your gross income. Your deadline to file is on or before June 30th. However, if you have an amount owing, you have to pay it before April 30th. Whether or not you completed Form NR6, you must file a Section 216 return for 2024 by April 30th, 2025 if both of the following conditions apply. You dispose of a rental property in 2024 that you had previously claimed capital cost allowance for. And number two, you are including the recapture of the CCA on your 2024 return. So to play it safe, just file before April 30th. You can find more details about this directly from the CRA in the link in my description below. Before we start filling out the forms, make sure you have the following. First, a valid social insurance number or an individual tax number. If you don't have one, apply for an individual tax number or ITN using form T1261. We put a link in the description below. Your NR4 slip. This is provided by your rental agent or payer and shows the rental income you received. Need help filing your NR4? Check out the video link above or in the description below. Records of rental income and expenses. Use the values from the NR6 worksheet I provided in my NR4 video. Link is in the description below. Form T776, Statement of Real Estate Rentals. This form reports your rental income and expenses. I'll be showing you how to fill this out next. Quick note, if you're in a co-ownership, each owner must complete a separate T776 form. In this video, for the sake of time, I'll be filling it out as a sole owner. And remember, this form is to be filled out by you, the non-resident owner, not your agent. The agent's responsibility pretty much ends once they send you the NR4 slips. Before we move on, a couple of important notes. First, in this example, we're assuming that there is no other income that needs to be reported to the CRA. This is strictly for a non-resident earning rental income in Canada. If you have other sources of Canadian income, consult a tax professional as additional forms are required. Second, at the time of making this video, the fillable CRA forms weren't working properly. The forms only allowed you to enter Canadian provinces and postal codes, which is frustrating because as a non-resident, your address is obviously outside of Canada. Also, there is no online submission option, so everything must be printed and mailed to the CRA. My recommendation, fill it out by hand, or if you're comfortable with PDFs, use a text overlay tool to type directly onto the document, just like I've done. All right, now let's continue. On part 1, I will put in my personal information, my name, Mr. Non-Resident, my social insurance number or my individual tax number, my current resident outside of Canada, so I'm at 123 Main Street in New York, New York, and my postal code is 10013. Don't worry about the country as you'll fill this out on your S.216 form. The fiscal period is from January 1st, 2024 to December 31st, 2024. Because I'm currently in year 2025. I am not in my final year of rental operations, so I'll mark no. If this is your last year, mark yes. If you're a sole owner of the property, you can put 100%. If you own the property with somebody else, you will need to put in your percent ownership. The industry code is pre-filled on the form. The tax shelter ID and partnership business number don't apply to me, so I'll leave it blank. If you have an accountant filling out this form, they will need to fill in their information in this section. Part 2, co-owners and partners will be filled out only if applicable. If you co-own the property, you can put their name and address in here and fill in the share of the net income or loss plus the percentage of ownership. In my case, it will be left all blank. In part 3, I input the addresses of the rental property, so I have 2, so I will put both addresses here and the number of units in each property. If you rent it out short term, you can put that income in here as well. In my case, I didn't, so I will only fill in the gross rent from each property here. I pulled these values from my NR6 worksheet. For my example, my total gross rental income was $53,185.50, which I put into box 8141. Since I don't have any other sources of rental income, I carry this amount into box 8299. Now, let's deduct our rental expenses in part 4. I'll again refer to my worksheet to fill out these values. I didn't have any advertising expenses, so I'll leave this blank. Insurance was $259.20. For the interest and bank charges, I'll take the interest I paid for the mortgage plus the bank fees, which came out to $42,812.80. Please note that it's only the interest portion of the mortgage, not the actual mortgage payment, which includes your principal. Most banks will mail you a mortgage statement at the end of the year, so you want to use only the amount of interest that you paid for the year. If you don't know this number, call the bank. I didn't have any office expenses. I did have professional fees from my accountant, so that goes in here, including the HST. In the management and administration fees section, I put my condo fees. You could also add any property management fees into this as well if you're paying a property manager. I fortunately didn't have any repair or maintenance costs this year, so that's blank. I don't have any staff on file, so that's blank. I did pay property taxes, so I entered that amount here. I also had small travel or transportation expenses of $20. I did have to pay for some utilities as it was vacant for a period of time, so that goes in here. I didn't have any motor vehicle expenses or other expenses. My accountant did mention that if we do put in other expenses, CRA might want an explanation. So to make it less complicated, leave it blank unless you really have something that doesn't fit in the other categories. But be prepared to explain it to the CRA. Add up all the expenses together on this line, and they should match the total number on your worksheet as well. If you had any personal portions of these expenses, you put them in here, along with short-term rental expenses in this section, and add them all up as well. In my case, I don't have to worry about this. On line 1, you take the value in A, the $58,340.84, and subtract box 9949 and 9366. In my case, it's the same number. For box 9369, you take box 8299 from the end of the previous page, the $53,185.50, and subtract it from line 1 above, which was $58,340.84, giving us negative $5,155.34. On line 2, if you co-own the property, you put your share. In my case, I own 100%, so I put the same value as above. Box 9945 is not relevant to me either, so I put the same number in line 3. I'm not claiming capital cost allowance, so I put the same value in line 4. I don't have any terminal loss, so I carry the value into line 5. Box 9367 and 9936 are also related to capital cost allowance, so I'll leave those blank and just carry over to line 6. If you're in a partnership, you will need to fill in this partnership section, but in our case, we are a sole proprietor, so we will enter the value from line 6 into box 9946. This would be the same if you were a co-owner. The remaining sections of the form aren't relevant to me or most single residential property owners, so I've left them blank. If you're claiming a capital cost allowance, CCA, you'll need to fill out this additional sections. However, CCA can be tricky and it may impact your tax situation in future years, so I highly recommend speaking with an accountant before claiming it. And that's pretty much it for Form T776. Now, let's move on to Form T1159, the Section 216 return. I'm going to walk you through 2 examples. First, I'm going to show you what happens when you have a loss, and then we'll go over a scenario where you have a gain. I'll be filling out the same form for both cases so you can see exactly how the numbers change in each situation. So let's start with the first example, reporting a loss on your rental property. Given the high interest rates this year, many of you may find yourself in this situation, so let's go through how to report it properly. In the first section, enter your name. Here we're putting the name as non-resident. Address of your principal residence is the same as before, but here I can put in my country, USA. My email is nonresident@gmail.com. Just a quick note, if you are providing an email address, you'll be registering for email notifications from the CRA automatically, which means you'll no longer receive paper mail from them. I'm personally fine with that, but if you prefer to receive physical mail, do not enter your email address on the form. Your social insurance number or your ITN number goes in here. This is mandatory. Birth date goes in here. My preferred language of correspondence is English. For the income section in box 12599, gross, enter your rental income as reported on your NR4 slip in box 16 or 26, gross rent paid. This is a total amount of rent you received before any deductions. In box 12600, enter in your net income, which is your gross minus any expenses. In this example, we are having a loss of negative $5,155.34, which you can take from box 9369 from your form T776. In box 15,000, I copy the same net value into here. For the deduction section, I don't have any of these deductions, and most of you won't either, so leave it blank. If you're not sure, again, ask your tax accountant. You can enter $0 into box 26,000 because line 1 minus 6 is a negative number. The federal tax on all taxable income portion is all going to be $0 as you have no income. Next page, federal tax is also going to be all zero. The refund or balance owing section, box 43500, is going to be $0. Box 43700 is going to be the value of box 17 and 27 on your NR4 slip, which is $901. This is the amount that I have paid into the withholding account for the year. We are not dealing with CCA on this property, so leave box 47600 blank. Your box 48200 will be the same value as above, so put $901. Now, 20 minus 23, 0 minus 901 is negative $901, so that goes into 24. Since the amount is negative, it goes into box 48400, meaning I qualify for a refund. This is because I didn't owe any tax for the year. My actual numbers resulted in a net loss. This can happen in two common scenarios. One, your estimated net income was positive when you filed your NR6, but your actual income ended up being negative due to unforeseen circumstances like unexpected expenses or property vacancy. Or number two, your estimated net income was already negative, but you filed your NR6 late. In this case, your NR6 approval came in after February 15th, which is the payment deadline for January's rent. To avoid penalties, you had to pay 25% of the gross rent up front. Either way, since I overpaid, I'm eligible for a refund. To finalize this document, you will need to sign here, put your phone number and date. If you use an accountant, fill in this section over here. Now, let's look at a scenario where you made a profit. The first section is the same as before, so I'll skip explaining this again. We will assume the gross rent is the same, but then your net income box 12600 came in at $8,000. This would have been reflected in your form T776 if this was a case. I didn't bother making another form, so let's assume that it was the same. We will copy this number into box 15000 or line 1. Again, we will skip any deductions and leave it blank and put the $8,000 into box 26,000 or line 7. So based on the amount in line 7, you'll have to start in the correct box. You can see the ranges of values up here. So in our case, since it's only $8,000, it will go into the first section as it's less than $55,867. So we put $8,000 at the top and subtract 0 for $8,000. Then you multiply this by 15%, which gives us $1,200. Add 0, which gives us the final number of $1,200. You can carry this number onto the next page on line 15. Copy this value into line 17, put in this value for the surtax for non-residents of Canada, $1,200, then multiply this by 48%, which gives us $576. Add 17 and 18 together and we get 1776. Copy this into box 43500 or line 20. Take the value from your NR4 slip as in the previous example and put the total amount you paid into the withholding account. Again, we'll use the same value of $901. Copy this into box 48200 since we have no CCA. Carry that into line 23. Subtract 20 from 23, and we end up with positive $875 in line 24. Since it's a positive number, it goes into box 48500, so you owe the CRA $875. If you have a balance owing, you need to pay this before April 30th. If you do not want to be charged interest or penalties. If you click on this link, it will bring you to the ways you can make this payment. The CRA makes it real easy to take your money. So there are multiple ways to do this, which you can go through on your own. The final step is to sign off on this form and add your phone number and date. Now you're ready for the last and final step, which is to put everything together and send it off to the CRA. Here's an overview of what you'll need to send. There's 3 documents. First, the NR4 slip sent to you by your agent. Second, Form T776, Statement of Real Estate Rentals. And third, Form T1159, Income Tax Return for Electing under Section 216. Don't forget to sign this. You put everything into an envelope and address it to Canada Revenue Agency CRA, Non-Resident Tax Services Office, and depending on where your country of residence is, you will mail it to a specific address. If your country of residence is in Denmark, France, Netherlands, United Kingdom, or the USA, you will send it to the Winnipeg Tax Center, and here's the address. Any other country, you send it to the Sudbury Tax Center at this address. This is the final stage of the non-resident rental property tax filing process. Congratulations, it wasn't so hard, was it? At the end of the year, you'll start this all over again. If you've followed my previous videos, you'll be well prepared as they give you some expert tips to make this process super simple for you and a lot easier. If you found this video helpful, you know what to do. Drop any questions and comments below as I do try to answer all of them, and I'll see you in the next video.